Hey guys, it's Favrneel, back on the Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and shall we? This time we are covering DZ set 6 Dark States Favrneel. So pretty much one of the main calling things for set 6, where it was the evolution of Favrneel and Graham Grace, and today we are finally going to cover Fav. And honestly, he got a pretty good evolution in the sense that he can still run the OG in the ride deck, but he gets so much benefit once you get into the new evolution. So let's get the start, shall we, and see what we got. First today we have our energy generator. It's a ride deck crest. You remember ride deck crest in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you would ride, put this card to your crest zone for 1 second, energy charge 3. Continues to be half to energy, auto begin your ride phase, energy charge 3. Then act once per turn, energy blast 7, draw a card. Alarm pretty solid. Every single turn you're getting a free 3 energy, and then on top of that, if you 1 second, you get an extra 3 2. And if you end up playing a deck that doesn't have a lot of energy blasters, this deck has no energy blasters, you can pay all your energy and then draw an extra card. All around, the energy generator is a nice card to have, but it's required because it's a ride deck crest, so therefore we run it. Moving on to our starter, we have Clock Hands Dragon. Grade 0 boost, 5k show, 6k base, auto remote pump for seconds, draw a card, standard starter, not special free draw if you go second. You can make this any starter you want. I choose to make it Clock Hands because it's the quote-unquote canonical starter of Favrneel. Therefore, I run Clock Hands here, but again, you can really run any starter that you want. Then we have our Overtrigger and Hades Dragon, Deity of Resentment, Galmagaheld. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, Overtrigger. When Overtrigger in your deck, run a Void as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one mutes, it gets plus +1 for the turn. If it during draw check, activate its additional effect, which you get, you the player, during your turn. All your vanguards get plus 10,000 power, plus 1 critical to the end of this fight. All around, pretty solid, because regardless if you drag checks or damage check this, someone gets a million and you get a draw, so either someone's getting hit that turn or someone's not getting hit that turn, unless your opponent has their own over to say something about it. But also, if you drive check this, mind you, in a deck with a restanding vanguard, regardless of which Favrneel you on, who can also gain an extra crit and 10,000 power inherently, you get a second set of 10,000 power and an extra critical, meaning regardless of when you sack this in this deck, if you sack it offensively, your opponent's probably dead the second you hit grade 3 or whatever grade 3 turn you have after this, because yeah, that's a lot of pressure going into it, considering your vanguard will have triple crit, at least 33k base. So all around, Galmagaheld, very solid over to have. You could run Volnut for more consistent multi-attacking, you could run his Fourier for recycling, but yeah, Galmagaheld is pretty much guaranteed pressure, and your opponent's always going to have to PG the vanguard if you do run this, so one of Galmagaheld. Then we move on to our normal triggers. We run 3 copies of Row's Wild Master Riley. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, contains guard circle. If your opponent's vanguard's a grade 3 grade at 5,000 shield, so you know she's a 10k shield and she's a draw trigger, so she helps increase the hand. This deck doesn't do a lot of soul charging, or it sends a lot of stuff to soul, but it doesn't like soul charge straight from deck. I mean, you don't have to worry too much about decking out, so we can afford to run a few Rileys just to help increase the hand and get our pieces out of deck that we either want to superior ride or just yeet into soul via soul charging skills. So 3 of Riley. Then we have a total of 8 crits, 4 copies of Lively Breath Dragon, grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. This can really be any crit you want. I choose to make it Lively Breath because it just fits with the theme of Favrneel. And then the other 4 crit being Stem Deviate Dragon, grade 0 boost, 4k power, 15k shield. Auto rear guard, at the end about this unit boosted, it put this unit to soul, choose over unit to get 2k for the turn. Pretty solid, you know, it gets you an extra soul card. This deck doesn't have any soul blasters, and technically speaking, you don't need to worry about that. But hey, if you have enough of these in the back row, that extra 2k could make the difference at the end of the day. You could run a normal crit in place of this, and that'd be completely fine too. Like I said, I just like having it just in case that 2k might make a difference. So total of 8 crit for pressure. Followed by, of course, 4 heals and Steam Scar on Mondigal. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power, standard heal, enough about it. You can use this, you can use a different heal, you can use counter heals if you want. I just personally prefer the normal heals because they have a 15k shield over the fluctuating 10 to 25k shield of the counter heals. But again, you do you in terms of pressure, but I prefer the 4 heal, which leaves us with 4 heal, 8 crit for pressure, and then the 3 draw for consistency. Moving on to our normal units, we have 2 copies, I'm going to say 4, 2 copies of Melody of the Fiendish Flower Taka. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, out active rearguard once per turn. Rest this unit, choose a damage zone card, put it to soul, and then if you put a card, put the top card of your deck into your damage zone face down, and if you put specifically a grade 3 or greater with a different card name from your vanguard to soul, you may soul charge one. All around pretty solid because it's a way to get any card in your damage zone to soul, and because you really want to hit a very specific grade 3 into soul via any means possible, being able to soul charge this if it ends up in damage zone, because the first few games I played with this deck, it did end up in damage zone, which is why Taka is in here in the first place. Being able to send that grade 3 to soul is great, and then possibly even get you an extra soul charge as well, so you can increase your chances of pulling off the restand skill 13 or more grades in soul. So around, Taka is a nice grade 1 to have. Gets damage zone cards into soul, can get your pieces back into the place that you need them in, and can possibly get you an extra soul charge on top of all of it just for a simple cost of resting him. So solid 2 for me. Then we have 4 copies of Exaggerate Draco Kid, who I loved how the thought process of me running him was, you know what, I need a grade 1 that can soul charge grade 3s, and I already got Taka in here, and I don't want to put Taka at 4. Then remembered, Barfometus is a deck that focuses on having a bunch of different grade 3s in soul. Proceed to go find Barfometus. Oh, look at that, Exaggerate Draco Kid doesn't have a specified thing for naming, so well, what did he do? Barfometus support cards can now work for Favrneel. Anyways, Exaggerate Draco Kid, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, continues rear guard, guard circle, or soul. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, it gets plus 2 grade, so it's a grade 3 in soul, which is great, so you know, benefits with Favrneel's skill over here. But then also, auto when placed on rear guard circle, if your soul has a grade 3, doesn't matter what grade your Vanguard's at, as long as there's a grade 3 in your soul, so you know, if Ryan Gold ends up in damage zone early and you open with Taka and Exaggerate, you can just call Taka, put Ryan Gold into Soul, and then you can Exaggerate because now you have a grade 3 in Soul. You Soul Charge 1, but then if you Soul Charge to grade 3 with that effect, you can choose another grade 3 from your drop zone and put it to Soul. Essentially meaning in that single turn, you can go from having, assuming that you proc this off on grade 2 turn, you can go from having 1 grade 1 in Soul to having 1 grade 1 and 3 grade 3s, meaning you have a total grade of 10 in your Soul. R1 Exaggerate Draco Kid is great. It turns your grade 3 discard fodders into possible soul charge targets. It gets you a free soul in place that isn't a mandatory, so if you're afraid of decking out, you can still afford to call him and not use a soul charge effect. And he's also a grade 3 in soul, meaning you can use him to proc off Favrneel's ability a little bit more consistently. All around, this card makes for an amazing grade 1 in the deck. I love his artwork. I love the fire that he breathes out with it being blue and just how it looks. So he's an easy 4 for me. Then we have 4 copies of the Tech Ethic card, and that is Time Turner Dragon, Clockwise Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. I lied earlier when I said there was no cards in the deck that cost energy. There's this one, but I don't use this ability enough to warrant remembering that it costs energy. So auto placed on rear guard circle. If your Vanguard's grade is less than or equal to your opponent's Vanguards, soul charge 1, this equals 2k for the turn. AKA, if you're going second, you will always be able to proc this off. If you're going first, you're going to have to wait till both of you get to grade 3 to proc that off. Then auto rear guard, or drop zone. When your other cards discarded from your hand during your turn via any means, it could be by cost, though the Vanguard, this is one of the few Vanguard decks that has a restanding Vanguard that doesn't involve you discarding cards from the hand. But if it did discard, you could use that, or you could use it via writing from hand or writing from ride deck. Energy box to remove this card from the game to choose one of the discarded cards, put it in your hand. Cool. It's a way to get your discard fodder back into your hand, meaning you can recycle your units in case you have a really good card that you have to ditch for ride deck because unfortunately your hand is just a bunch of PGs and you know your invaluable pieces. But then also in the sense of on place rear guard, that free soul charge in 2k works out really well if you're going second. In fact, this entire deck works out really well if you're going second because you ram rush your opponent with all these grade 1s. And well, why would you do that when it could put you in a very bad situation in terms of defensive power, considering you have exactly 12 grade 3s in this deck? Well, you would do it because of this. We have 4 copies of our PG Repelled Malice Dragon. Grade 1 boost is 0 shows, K base contains Sentinel. After 4 Sentinels in deck, I'll put on guard circle. Choose your mutants. It cannot hit to battle. If your hand's 2 more cards in it, choose a card from your hand, guard standard PG. Nothing too special about it. Basically, that means if this is only one of the cards in your hand, puts it on guard circle, you don't have to score. It's great because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. Spam the ever living hell out of these guys if you go second. If you go first, just call this one. I hope you get a grade 3 in a soul, and then you spam this. And then when your opponent eventually counterattacks you because you've dropped pretty much all your hand cards and they know for a fact you have a bunch of grade 3s in your hand, throw Repel Malice Dragon at them, give them the middle finger because they can no longer hit your Vanguard, and you're good to go. All in Repel Malice Dragon is a very solid PG to have. You could run Riskill Hate Dragon, or you could run the Ridicule Disruptor. They all have the exact same skills as Repel Malice Dragon. They choose to run Repel Malice Dragon because it came out close to the time of Favrneel's release, so 4 for me in terms of Sentinels. Then we have last grade 1 in the deck, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Divagating Chopper. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto and Rotopon, draw a card, choose a card from your hand, discard it. So this is Favrneel's canonical grade 1 of the ride line. Does that mean it's good? No. What you should do in terms of ride line here is you should run like not Deep Sonic, you could run Deep Sonic, but I would recommend you run Bad Steve and Anger Richard for extra soul and extra hand cards. But hey, drawing a card and discarding one, well, sometimes it does work out for bad timing. It gets you a grade 3 into drop zone, which you can then use with Exaggerate Draco Kid if you end up soul charging a grade 3 off its skill. Just saying, and it does get you an extra hand card, so it allows you to possibly draw into Exaggerate Draco Kid or draw into whatever you need for extenders. Or if you're me, you're just going to draw into triggers. Or to be more exact, that's a Graham Grace one. For this one, I actually do draw consistently good cards. So one of Divagating Chopper, it's a nice grade 1 to have in the ride deck, though again, you could go the Bad Steve, Anger Richard route, but I prefer this because canonical ride line, so one of in the ride deck. Then we have our grade 2s. First up, we have 4 copies of Selfish Engraver with the giant snake Yomagonda devouring the moon over there. Grade 2 and step 5 Kashio, 10k base, auto and rear guard once her attack hits anything. Could be a vanguard or could be a rear guard. You get to soul charge 1. Downside is that is a mandatory soul charge, so if your opponent is smart enough or your opponent is me and they let that attack hit, regardless if it benefits them or not, they can make you soul charge and then put you closer to deck out, which at the end of the day, if they think they can stall you out, might end up making it so that you can't win because they stalled you to deck out point. But hey, free soul charge is free soul charge for on hit pressure, and then auto rear guard at the battle that she attacked into anything. If your soul has 10 or more cards in it, put her to soul to counter charge 1. Pretty solid. Both of the main vanguards in this deck cost 2 CB. Technically, one costs 2 CB or send a hand card to soul, but being able to get you counter charge and then get an extra grade 2 into soul is great as well. The downside is here, it requires you to have 10 or more cards in soul, and while this deck does have the fun, soul charging combo with these 3 over here, the downside is specifically, these 3 don't end up getting your soul to 10, and typically you're not trying to get your soul to 10, you're trying to get your soul to 13 or more grades specifically, not the amount of cards. So it's sometimes hard to hit that 10 or more cards in soul, but it's also relatively easy because you're constantly sending stuff to soul anyways, so if you end up getting that counter charge ability, good for you, it gets you an extra grade 2 into soul as well, and again, we got the on-hit pressure for soul charge, and neither her abilities require to attack into a vanguard for the effects to go off. So 4 copies of Selfish Engraver. Really good for on-hit pressure and really good for resource management. Then we have 4 copies of Time Flyer Dragon, grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base, who I did not realize when I first read him that it was supposed to be Favrneel support. Auto rear guard when your grade 3 or greater vanguard attacks. This unit gets 5,000 power for the turn. If your vanguard attacked 2 or more times this turn, choose one of the vanguards and gets 5k for the turn as well. So this card is a non-once per turn plus 5k every single time the vanguard attacks, and then if the vanguard has attacked 2 or more times this turn, God forbid Bushy releases a Dark States grade 3 that can attack 3 times in a turn, that vanguard will also get 5k too. All around, pretty solid for Time Flyer Dragon. It gives itself 5,000 power twice because Favrneel is going to attack twice regardless of which grade 3 you're on, so it's going to be a 20k base, and the Favrneel that's attack is going to get an extra 5k, so at least an 18k, plus whatever power bonuses it may have, so 28k double critical, maybe even 38k double critical, plus maybe even the overs, 48k triple critical without the use of other triggers. So all around, Time Flyer makes for a very good grade 2. Helps build up the Vanguard's power, help builds up his own power, and literally the only requirement to this is that your Vanguard swings. All around, this card's a really great grade 2 to have for the early game rush, and if you call it down, your opponent's pretty much going to have to kill it because otherwise it will be the thing that kills them. So 4 of. God, I haven't said that line in so long, I miss saying that, where like if you don't kill this, it's going to kill you. God, I miss that line. Then we have our last grade 2 in the deck, one of in the ride deck, no copies of the main deck of Gear Rhinos of Barreling Impulsion. Grade 2 intercept 5k shield, 10k base, contains Vanguard Circle. When you would ride from the ride deck, you may Soul Blast 1 instead of choosing a card from your hand and discarding it. Okay, pretty solid. That's essentially a really good free ride deck because this is the only card in the deck that's Soul Blast, technically, and well, you're always going to have one card in Soul that does not contribute to the Favrneel 13 or more grades because it's going to be your starter. So essentially, once you get to grade 2, even though you may have discarded a really bad card off Divigan Chopper because you had no choice because your hand was kind of iffy at the moment, you can just Soul Blast out your grade 0 and boom, you got a free ride deck. All around, Gear Rhinos of Barreling Impulsion, while it is a generic card, I feel like it does work well as Favrneel's canonical grade 2 ride line, just because the deck doesn't need the starter in Soul, and that just turns into a free ride deck for you. So honestly, one of in the ride deck, not a bad grade 2 to have in my opinion. And then we have our grade 3s, 4 copies of Demonic Sword of Rivering Elgios. Grade 3, 200% right, 13k base. Auto rear guard when this unit attacks into a Vanguard. If your Vanguard is a Favrneel, put one of the rear guard into Soul, choose an opponent's rear guard, kill it, and then the sum of the grades of the Dark States cards in Soul is 13 or greater, counter charge 1. All around, pretty solid. It can yeet another card into Soul, so you can swing with another card, then swing with Elagos, send that other card to Soul, and then kill an opponent's rear guard. And then you have to finish the counter charge skill first if you can, but if you're on OG Favrneel, after you resolve the rest of the skill, you can send a hand card to Soul because a rear guard died, regardless if it's by battle or card effect, and draw a card. All around, Elagos is a very good grade 3. He can get you extra souls, most likely other grade 3s into Soul, kill an opponent's rear guard, possibly proc off Favrneel's effect, and it can also get you a counter charge out of all of it just for simply attacking and sending any other rear guard to Soul. Yeah, Elagos is an amazing grade 3 for Favrneel, and it's an easy 4 in this deck for what he does. Then we have 4 copies of Purgatory Bear and Herodotus. Of course, I forget to get the English Art of You. Grade 3, 200% 13k base. Auto rear guard at the battle of this unit attacked into a Vanguard. card. If your Vanguard's also a Favrneel, shove this unit to soul, choose an opponent's rear guard, murder it. Okay, so essentially does what Elagos does over here, but doesn't require, actually it does require you to attack the Vanguard, but it sends itself to soul, so you're guaranteedly getting a grade 3 into soul, while Elagos, yes, can get you a grade 3 into soul, but most times it's going to be Herodotus on the board. But point is, gets itself to soul, kills an opponent's rear guard, and then again, possibly trigger Favreneel's ability if you're on the OG one. All around, pretty solid, kills an opponent's rear guards by simply swinging into the Vanguard, doesn't matter if it hit or not, and you get to get an extra grade 3 into soul, and this one also does it on attack, therefore you can nullify their possibility of them intercepting, which is also great. And then auto soul at the beginning of your ride phase, if your Vanguard is Favrneel, bind this card and ditch a card, and then activate Persona Ride. Until the end of the turn, you cannot activate Persona Ride abilities with other cards, and you cannot ride. So downside is for the rest of the turn, you can't Superior Ride. So if you're stuck on OG Fav because maybe you didn't get new Fav into Soul, and then even if you do soul charge a new Fav, you can no longer Superior Ride at the end of the turn because it's still technically a part of the turn. You still get a Persona Ride effect out of it, meaning your entire front row is going to get that plus 10k, and considering the fact that the only way to pull this off at the beginning of the ride phase would imply you already were on Favrneel in the first place, that means your two Favrneels are going to go off regardless, meaning your entire front row is going to get, well, if you're on this one, your entire front row will get plus 20k, and this one will get an extra crit, so this one will be a 33k double critical, or it's just this one, so this one would be a 33k double critical, and your entire front row will get an extra 10k on top of that. Our Herodotus is a very good grade 3 to have. Kills rear guards, gets you grade 3s in soul, and activates Persona Rides, allowing for a lot more pressure to go down on the opponent's Vanguards, meaning technically speaking you have a total of 8 Persona Rides in your deck, so easy for Herodotus, just an amazing grade 3 to have as support. Then we have 4 copies of the Evolved form of Favrneel, who I was not looking forward to, and then after reading his skill, I was like, okay, Favrneel did great with this one. Purgatory Great Dragon Emperor, Favrneel Rheingold, grade 3, Twin Drive, Persona Ride, 13k base, 4 copies in the main deck, no copies in the right deck, and we'll see why in a minute. Continues Vanguard during turn if your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, and your soul has Purgatory Dragon Deity Favrneel, all of your front row units get 10,000 power and plus 1 critical. So specifically this unit gets the crit, not your entire front row. So your entire front row gets a Persona Ride, and then you get the crit on this unit, just by your opponent being at grade 3. Cool. And then auto Vanguard at the beginning of your main phase, choose a card from your drop zone, shove it to soul, choose an opponent's rear guard, murder it. So the one problem with Favrneel, and the one problem that you could exploit with the Deer Days AI, is that every time your opponent's rear guard was killed, it's a May clause, but the Deer Days AI would always do it anyways. You can send a hand card to soul to draw a card, meaning you could possibly keep decking yourself out while also losing better cards from hand, because maybe you're trying to get better cards from your draws, and maybe you send a PG to soul to try to draw a really good grade 1, such as this, or what this originally replaced, which was Brainwash, and then you end up just drawing a trigger out of it. But now, you don't get it every single time something dies, but you get a card from drop zone, so you're not decking yourself out, and then you get to pick the rear guard that dies, not your opponent. So you get actually to pick the important unit that gets removed off the board, which is great. And then auto Vanguard once per turn at the end of the battle this unit attacked. If the sum of the grades of Dark State cards in your soul is 13 or greater, CB2 or put a Favrneel card from your hand into soul to stand this unit and lose a drive for the turn. Cool, so you could either pay the regular 2 CB that OG Favrneel would have paid to stay on this unit, or in case you're running low on CB and you have an extra Favrneel you can send from hand to soul, you just send that Favrneel to soul, stand the Vanguard, and you still get the drive minus, and you still got an extra Vanguard attack, all of it. All around really great for pressure, and the best part about his ability is auto soul. At the end of your turn, if your Vanguard is Purgatory Dragon Deity Favrneel, rather this card is rest. That is an amazing skill, because this is why you want to get this card into soul as fast as possible. You obviously want to run this in the ride deck, because since you're only allowed 1 copy of Favrneel in your deck in general, you don't want to end up running this in the main deck and then possibly damage checking it and then not having, Tekka to pull out, or you don't want to end up running it in the main deck and this is never soul charging it because, again, there's only 1 copy. So you'd rather have it in the ride deck, get to grade 3, and then just risk this getting damage checked, because, again, it's easier to hit 4 copies of it and then Taka than just hit 1 copy of it and hit Taka. So being able to send it to soul via that reason is great, or send it to soul via other cards is great. But at the end of your turn, if you're on the OG Favrneel, you get to Superior Ride it. Then once you get to your next turn, your entire front row is going to get plus 10k, this is going to get a crit, your opponent's going to lose a rear guard, you're going to get a free soul card, and automatically this card is going to have amazing pressure on it. Around Favrneel Rheingold is an amazing grade 3 for pressure. Has numbers for the front row, gets benefits for himself, is a better restand than OG Fafnir, and it can also Superior Ride itself just by simply having the OG on Vanguard Circle. No requirements needed. Easy 4 in the main deck for me. And then our last card in the deck comes at 1 copy in the right deck, no copies in the main deck of our only allowed to be one of Purgatory Dragon Deity Favrneel. Grade 3 to Persona 13k base, continues to only have up to one Purgatory Dragon DD Favrneel in your deck. Auto Vanguard at the beginning of your main phase, your opponent chooses one of their rear guards, murders it, and then if you did not ride this turn, he gets an extra 10,000 power and +1 critical on top of it. So, being a 23k double crit is great. Real quickly, something I want to go back to with Rheingold, like I mentioned earlier with Herodes, because it's 10k and a crit skill is just continuous regardless if you rode or not. Say, for example, you Persona Ride or you just remove Herodes from the game, or sorry, bind them from the game, automatically your entire form will get plus 20k and the Vanguard will have an extra crit on top of it. While in this case, you do actually need Herodes to pull that off. But hey, being able to be a 23k double crit just by not riding is great. So you always have the extra crit regardless, as long as this thing was on the Vanguard circle before the ride phase, which is great. And your opponent will still lose a rear guard at the start of the main phase. And then, like I said earlier, when I was going over Rheingold's skill, Auto Vanguard, when your opponent's rear guard is retired during your turn, by putting a hand card to soul, you get to draw a card. So it's a way to recycle hand cards and a way to get you extra grade 3s into soul. So you can end up increasing the chances of you being able to hit the 13 or more Dark States cards. So you can do the superior stand, and it also gets you more hand cards back as well. So on a pretty solid ability for that. And then finally, Auto Vanguard, once per turn at the end of this unit attacked it to anything, if the sum of the grades of Dark States cards in your soul is 13 or more, CB2, stand this unit and lose a drive for the turn. So downside is it does not have an alternative cost. That is a mandatory CB2 to get the restand, but it is a free restand after all, with the CB2s, considering the fact there's only 2 units in this deck that cost CB, and then this gets you countercharge out of it as well, and so does this, so it's not too bad necessarily. And not to mention the fact, again, it does kill your opponent's rear guards, and every time something dies, regardless of it's during by battle or by card effect, you get a free draw and a hand card to soul, which is great as well. And he still ends up pulling off the plus 10k double crit ability, so if there are games where you don't hit Rheingold into soul, you can at least have the double crit 23k base Vanguard for the second grade 3 turn. Armor Favrneel is a very solid grade 3 to have in the ride deck. Again, you could technically run in the main deck and just try to proc it off with Rheingold, but there are so less odds that you could hit with the OG Favrneel that you might as well have this card in the ride deck and have this card in the main deck, since you can only have one copy in the deck regardless of where it goes. So one of OG Favrneel in the ride deck for us. And that's it for this deck. I hope all of you enjoyed. Honestly, this deck is very fun to play. You got the 2 Vanguards that can stand themselves. One is just a direct upgrade over the other, but they both add pressure on the second grade 3 turn regardless of which one you're on. Herodes can kill rear guards and get Persona Rides. Elagos gets you rear guard kills and counter charges. Time Flyer is just essentially every single time the Vanguard attacks, both of them get 5k. This deck has a whole bunch of consistencies and a lot of fun different combo routes it can go down. It's just really fun to play, so I hope you guys enjoyed. I suggest you guys try out the deck for yourself, and I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join us on Twitch, and don't forget to snap your Vanguards.